Right now, Ezra, obviously good economic numbers coming out on Friday, 8.3% unemployment. It seemed to come, we really had bookends this week. At the beginning of the week, the CBO put out some just downright depressing news about the length of this recession, the depth of the national deficit and our debt problems. End of the week, though, we all had reason to be happy. Unemployment going down, and it looks like a pretty good outlook moving forward.
Yeah, those were very good numbers. I mean, the thing you want to keep on worrying about is Europe. Greece is having some real trouble coming to another bailout agreement today. But right now, the economy has shown a real sort of desire to recover, right? There's a sort of a natural need to replace homes, to replace autos, and it's beginning to sort of rip through. We get some of the bad sort of economic news a little bit out of the way here. We should see a real recovery. It reminds me, I wanted to say something on the Romney clip we showed on the way in here. You can believe Obama's stimulus did a good job, did a bad job. It's good. That's a different argument. But that particular fact what always annoys me so much. The Obama administration probably made a mistake in sort of predicting where unemployment would be, but when they made that prediction, we thought the economy was shrinking at a rate of 4%. It was actually shrinking at 9%. We found out later the recession that was before the Obama administration came in was twice as bad, more than twice as bad as we thought at the time. And so I always think of the folks who use that, and you do see it in punditry and you see it among politicians, it's just a dishonest way of going about the economic argument. The real argument from that is we should have had a bigger recovery package, not if you have a problem that's twice as large as you thought. The fact that your small solution didn't work does not discredit solutions in general.
I don't know that I'd call it dishonest if you're using the words that came out of the administration's own mouth. Certainly, though, the argument that you made is an argument the Obama administration can moving forward. Saying we didn't, and of course they can point the finger at Bush in general. So how does, and feel free to respond to what I just said, but also talk about the delicate dance that this president makes, though, because you're just in such a terrible position if you're a politician in the middle of a deep recession and things start to turn around, because you don't want to say things are going too well, because then everybody out of work is going to look at you and say you're disconnected, but you don't want to
I mean, the
be
numbers
the malaise
good,
president
but
either.
They're not that good.
Yeah, so what does the president do over the next six to 9 months?
To some degree, I think he hopes, right? Whatever else he can do, I think the basic way to look at this election is if jobs are coming in at about 150,000 a month, that's probably an even odds bet on President Obama. If they're coming in around 200,000, he's probably a little bit of the favorite, and 250 as we had last month, he's probably going to win this one pretty easily. And I mean, you know me on these things. I'm not such a big messaging guy. I don't think campaigns matter that much. Obama has, in the latest Washington Post ABC News poll, opened up a 6-point lead on Romney. Obama's up to 50%, and by 2 to 1, Americans say the more they hear about Mitt Romney, the less they like him. But I do think a lot of that has to do with, A, the GOP primary, but more than that for Obama, the economy. And by the way, that is why I try to emphasize things like the depth of the recession, not in Obama's favor or not, but what's important if either Obama or Romney come in is that folks have a real understanding of where we've come and what's going on here, because that's what you need for solutions. And what I don't like about the Republicans who sort of taken on this 8%, that is a political mistake by the Obama administration. I don't think they can get out of it. But it is a problem that we've discredited things like stimulus, things like payroll tax cuts, in sort of this effort to have this campaign, because at some point Mitt Romney may win this election, and he's going to need to be able to have solutions. And if he does have another recession coming from Europe, for instance, but he's taken any type of stimulus off of the table in an effort to beat Obama, that's going to be very, very, very bad for the economy going forward.
Revenue.
No, I think he's absolutely right. I think that you cannot in any way play down the fact that when the stimulus was presented, we thought we were at a 4% downturn. It was more than twice that. Now, I agree, Joe, that that's going to have to be an argument in the campaign, but it's a legitimate argument that Mitt Romney's not dealing with. The other part that I think he's going to have to deal with is given the global politics. You started this segment talking about his foot in the mouth. I mean, Americans are looking at Egypt, Syria. Do we think this guy's competent enough to handle all of this when he can't even run his own campaign? So I think that Romney's got a real problem. Then the next couple of weeks with no debates, no drama, a lot of the social issues, including the issue of what you just raised about the Catholic Church, including voting suppression. I think, Mark, the fact that one study says 5 million people may not be able to vote because of these new vote ID laws. A lot of things are going to be taking center stage in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, a lot of liberal thinking on this.
In February, talking about voter suppression.
Let me ask you a question.
Never too
Well, they started doing
It's
that.
never too early.
They started suppressing the
Oh,
February.
God.
Of course,
You know what? I don't want to have this debate.
Okay, other
Holy
side,
cow.
please, other side.
I get some caffeine. Let's have the debate.
No, I don't want to
What
have
have we
this.
learned about Mitt Romney so far in this campaign? Stump for Mitt Romney, if you had to.
I don't think I can.
No, you have to.
I don't.
Well, you have to.
Okay.
Just
So,
try.
okay. He is beating a very weak field right now.
I can give Mitt Romney some love here.
Can you do an argument for Mitt Romney? Because I got to say, as a conservative, I can't. But go ahead.
The argument for Mitt Romney is that in a field in which there is an enormous amount of pressure to move very, very far to the right, and to be fair, his policies have moved very, very far to the right, he has pulled some pretty good people around him. Glenn Hubbard, Greg Mankiw, Vin Weber. He's pulled an economic policy team that has advocated many times in the past for things like a massive mortgage refinance program, that's advocated in Mankiw's case for a carbon tax, that's argued in Vin Weber's case for the Simpson-Bowles Commission, which would have brought up $2 trillion in taxes. The hope with Mitt Romney is that he's just playing a game here, and the advisors are really where you want to take the cue.
So
the dangerous thing is that you look at his actual policies.
Yeah.
He's got a $7 trillion tax cut.
Ezra, you're not helping me at all here. You're making it even harder for me to defend Mitt Romney. I mean, you know, I think
Pragmatism, that's not helpful?
Well, it's helpful if you're a progressive who writes for the Washington Post, not so if you're a small government conservative.
That's I think an issue, right? It's an issue if we've come to the point where those issues are progressive. What about a mortgage refinancing plan is specifically progressive? What about what Greg Mankiw, who is Bush's chief economic advisor, would call Pigovian tax, to remove some taxes away from work and onto carbon to get down pollution, carbon pollution, is progressive. That's just good policy. The fact that it's become progressive is a problem for Republicans.
It's good policy if you have your worldview. Not everybody thinks like you.
Which part of my worldview is needed there?
Well, the fact that you want the federal government to step in, you think the problem with the president's policies are that his stimulus programs weren't big enough.
But wait. We didn't talk about stimulus at all.
I'm just talking about all of your arguments, and as far as carbon taxes go, it might shock you, but a lot of Americans, when you have unemployment at the rate we have, a lot of Americans don't think a carbon tax right now makes an awful lot of sense.
But that's it. I don't think anybody is putting one in.
Second, after you ask the question, I'm going to answer it, and I don't want this to be crossfire, but you also bring up mortgage financing, again, fueled by the government. Every social ill you believe needs to be handled by the federal government. There are about 50% of Americans that think the federal government has far too large of a footprint in their lives. I happen to be one of them. So you can't just and Ezra, you can't just say my way or the highway. How can you debate anything that I disagree with? I understand. Maybe half of America shares your worldview. The other half most clearly does not.
But see, this is, I think, where we get into some trouble here, because you actually need to make these as a policy argument instead of just saying, oh, this is left, this is right, this is what half of America believes, this is what half of America doesn't believe. Mortgage refinancing either makes sense or it doesn't. But it doesn't not make sense because it's a left-wing position or right-wing position. It was the original position of the Senate Republicans. It is now the position of Glenn Hubbard and Christopher Mayer. So there's a question as to whether or not we should do it. But I think this is actually the big problem in politics, and this is where politics does become crossfire instead of an actual argument about how to govern the country. When people say, oh, you know what, that's a left-wing position, so I don't actually need to deal with it on the merits. I don't need to worry about whether or not we actually have to think about climate change.
I can do it without left-wing, right-wing. I can say either you believe the federal government needs to take a more activist role in our lives, or you don't. I think the federal government's powers have expanded, and I think over the past decade in a way that frightens me and frightens a lot of Americans. I don't know whether that's left or whether that's right, but I don't want the federal government involved in even more things.
And this is, I think, the point. These are all positions that I just named out that are held by, or have been held very recently by, a set of Republican advisors.
Well, that's fine.
Not one of the positions, give me a second to respond here, Joe, not one of the positions would in any serious way increase governmental control over the economy. Helping people to refinance their mortgages is not a big government program. Changing the tax structure because you want to do less taxing on work and more taxing on environmental externalities does not change the aggregate amount of government control over the economy. That's sort of the point. We can have discussions here that are about the best way to deal with the current fiscal burden we have, and those are the ones I'm talking about. We're not talking about new regulations. We're not talking here about the healthcare reform bill. We're not talking about financial regulation reform. When we talk about Simpson Bowles, an argument a plan that you've spoken about quite positively here, we're not talking about increasing government control. We're talking about saying that if we need to close the fiscal gap, taxes are still on the table. Those things are just questions about pragmatic governments. They're not questions about ideology.
I don't know what happened to Mitt Romney. Ezra has found a couple of policies that a few of Mitt's advisors support, and he wants to talk about it.
I guess so.
I mean,
Just was asking you to stump for him.
Yeah. Well, it's very hard to stump for Mitt Romney, and the reason it's hard to stump for Mitt Romney is